Welcome to the Family Milk Cow podcast, where in every episode I cover topics that equip you with the skills and know-how to look after your girls in the barn. Family milk cows are more than just livestock. They are a part of our families. They deserve the best care possible from knowledgeable and responsible owners. So pull up a chair or your milk stool and let's dive into another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. Hello, thank you so much for being here as we are coming to the end of season 2 of the Family Milk Cow podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kelsey Wolf. You can, of course, find me hanging out at the blog and YouTube channel, Rough and Tumble Farmhouse. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and all the places. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about a kicky cow. If you have a cow who is kicking a lot or you just have to deal with kicks on occasion, we're going to be talking about why that might be and also some things that you can do to try and prevent them from kicking in the first place. And then also, if they are continuing to kick, what are some solutions we can try to get them to not kick? Because, of course, a cow's kick, it can kill a man. It is a serious thing. A kick from a cow, it can happen lightning fast. And so it's important that we can prevent it from happening altogether by kind of changing some things potentially or by teaching them to not kick. Now, before we just assume that we have just maybe an asshole of a cow who wants to kick us a lot, there might be something else going on. So before we start talking about the solutions to the problem, let's maybe figure out what could be causing the problem aside from having a cow who's just a total jerk. Which is a possibility. I'm not saying that's not a thing. Juneberry, she has definitely gone through her phases, usually beginning of the season. She is really kicky. It's almost like we're kind of having to train in again for the first week or two. Also, when she's not when she's in heat, but kind of about to come into heat, she just has a ton of attitude. And that's when I try and be more aware of the kicking potential. For the most part, though, she's pretty decent about not kicking, but there's usually at least one bucket every year that ends up getting a foot in it or it's kicked across the room or whatever. And there's nothing like a kick from a cow, an unexpected one, to really wake you up when you're in the middle of milking. Let's talk about some of those environmental factors that could be causing the kicking. So, one of the most obvious ones that is certainly on my mind right now because they're so terrible this time of year, and that is bugs. Are you milking in an area where there are a lot of flies, horse flies, mosquitoes, anything, gnats in their ears, things that are pestering them or causing them pain or discomfort? I typically, when my cow comes in the barn, I give her sort of a brush down once over. She has her snack. I usually apply a fly spray, just sort of one of I've got some hardcore fly sprays for when I'm just out in the pasture spraying them. And then I have a little more of sort of an eco-friendly type fly spray that I'm more comfortable, spraying just before I milk. I also have a barn fan for her to help not only with the heat, which can be pretty stifling, but to help with the flies as well. So check and see if bugs are a problem. You should also check and see if there is injury. I had at one point when I was milking, I could not figure out why my cow was being just so awful. And then it turns out I realized that she had a slice, like a cut on the other side of her teat that I couldn't really easily see when I was milking. And of course, I talk all the time about being a nursing mom and how so much of it relates and translates into milk cows, which is kind of surprising. And so knowing that she had a slice on her teat and just the empathy and the sympathy for, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, just knowing how much that must have been hurting her, and I felt terrible. So look and see if there is something that's causing them discomfort, if there is an injury somewhere or something else going on with their body, or maybe with their halter is on too tight or something, or there's something, just check for those sort of environmental factors like flies and also physical factors on your cow. That's also something else to think about is what is going on with your milking routine. Is it something about the way you are milking them? I know, for example, again, I talk about Juneberry all the time because she's my main milk girl and has been for years. Her front teats are really long, easy to hand milk. Her back teats are much smaller. And I discovered it took me, I think, 3 years of milking her that actually the optimum position for milking her back teats is directly behind her, which is a little terrifying, but I am able to get a much better grip that she likes better, that I can more efficiently get milk out of if I'm milking her straight from behind. And even still, again, sometimes just because it's probably not something we did for a few years, is when I get back there to start milking her, she can be kind of touchy, a little bit kicky. And then the more I milk, then the more she goes, "Oh yeah, okay, this is fine. This feels good. Let's do this thing." You also might find that your cow, if they're especially engorged, might be more kicky in the beginning, and that's just because it is It's painful. Again, talking again about being a nursing mom, when you are engorged and you first are nursing, it is super uncomfortable at first. And then once you get kind of that relief and that release of some of that milk coming out, then it feels a lot better. So if your girl is really kicky at, she's maybe just freshened and she's real swollen and she's kicky at first, it's one of those things where you just have to kind of stick with it. And eventually, after, 30 seconds or a minute, they might actually kind of go, okay, this is fine, and stop kicking. Now, going back to sort of her different teat shapes, there's different grips sort of for each teat that work better. Additionally, different hands on her front teats, I can be flexible and use either hand. On her back teats, that's a no go. It has to be the left hand on the left teat, the right hand on the right teat, or she will not, literally not stand for it. That can be really difficult or frustrating when, especially if you're a hand milker like I am currently, and your arms are just they've had it, and maybe that one particular quarter has a ton of milk, and you're trying and trying to get the milk out, but your hand is just it's dead, and she doesn't want you to milk with that other hand. It can really be a struggle. But that can be something that is causing an issue, is that your grip is weird, or they don't like that hand or something, or if you're just learning how to milk and you possibly are, squeezing the teat not quite right and milk is going up and in, which can also be very bad and lead towards mastitis. So take a look at your own milking routine. And this goes towards machine milking as well. I don't currently machine milk and haven't in a long time, but making sure that the inflations that are on there are the right size, that the pressure is correct as well, because those things can cause discomfort and pain for her. And that might be causing some kicking as well. Another one to check for is what side you're milking on. Some cows are very sensitive to this because they just get used to the routine. Again, same with Juneberry. I milk her on the right side. I don't think she would let me milk her on the left side. And that might be something that if it's a cow that's new to you, they may have a preference on that. And again, I think that is just what they're used to comfort wise. And again, also, I think it changes the grip and positioning and the pressure of the hands, because you're going to, of course, milk, your right side is going to milk, the front teats if you're on the right side, and then on the left side, so just the positioning of you with the cow can also potentially make a difference. Some other things to look at. Do you have other people milking her? That can be something that causes issues too. They might kick more with one person than with another. And then that's typically something, I'm sorry, that person they kick with is doing wrong or to make them uncomfortable. So just consider, if you can, switching to machine milking might help, because then it feels the same to them every single time. Another thing to consider is, what is the milking environment like? Are there a bunch of distractions? Are there kids running around being loud? Are there dogs stressing them out? Are there cats jumping on their back? I tried to milk Juneberry. Our barn is set up as such that kind of one whole wall of it kind of opens up, and it also has a smaller door within that big sliding door. And I really wanted, especially on like hot days, to just open up even the little door to let a breeze in. This made her too nervous because she could see the dog walking back and forth. There were chickens running around. There's all kinds of stuff going on out there that made her nervous and uncomfortable, and she was way kickier and way less chill. So take a look at other things around her as well that could be causing the kicking. The last thing to talk about in terms of, kind of the prevention here, to see what we can do on the front end of this to prevent the kicking, is her calf with her. This is something that can calm them down if they have a calf right where they can see them. I talked in a previous episode about kind of how I do my training of my replacement heifers and having the calves in with mom. So that might be helpful to have the calf right in there with mom, where she can see her, smell her, so forth. Or sometimes even letting the calf nurse while you milk, as you're just kind of training in a cow, that can help as well. In terms of training with Kicky cows, there are a few things you can try. So, as I've talked about in my previous episode, again, about training in replacement heifers, if you have the opportunity, it's a good idea to desensitize them when they're young. Get them used to being touched all over, get them used to being touched on their udder or their teats, all that kind of stuff. Just getting them used to that in general can be very helpful. It's also good to introduce your cow to the milk parlor early. Even if she has had calves before, it's not a bad idea to bring her in and get her used to that routine again when it's a fresh year and a new calf. Especially if you have a first time freshener, doing that stanchion training and that stanchion setup is so important. I'd say minimum at least a couple weeks before she's due to calve, start bringing her in, getting her used to the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything in that milking area. And then hopefully by the time it comes time for the milking, the only thing that is new, instead of everything being new and strange, the only new thing is the fact that she is being milked or having a milk machine put on her, which is going to be plenty startling in itself. A good old standby trick for kind of desensitizing a Kicky cow, and this one comes from keeping the family cow, is a clean glove that is taped to the end of a broom handle, and then you use that just to touch the cow on her udder. You obviously don't want to be rubbing like a dirty glove on the end of her teats or something like that, but just getting her used to there being sort of a hand type thing under there. And the great thing about the broom is that she can kick at it and kick at it. And as long as you are, being pretty sturdy or as sturdy as you can, she's going to learn pretty quickly that that's not going to make it go away. And that's a big thing for her to learn is this thing can be there. This thing can be touching her. She can't make it go away, and it also isn't actually hurting her, so it's fine. That's a really great tool to use if you have an animal you can't even get to physically with your body in a safe way. It's to duct tape that glove to the end of a long handled thing. Okay, so we are what? I don't even know how many minutes into this episode, and we haven't even talked about the things to do to sort of stop your cow from kicking. We've talked all about prevention, which I think is something that I typically tends to be a theme in the podcast is what can we do to make sure we are setting up our cows for success. If none of those things have changed your kicky cow, here are some things you can try. What I personally have used before, especially when I am milking while I'm pregnant, because I got my big old pregnant belly down there and I just want a little bit, sort of like a seat belt basically, is some hobbles. I got a really nice pair of, I think they're Weaver possibly, a really nice pair of hobbles that are sort of like a cinch, almost like a belt buckle sort of a thing on each leg. They are padded, so they are really nice in terms of they're not going to hurt your animal. I wouldn't recommend tying them with twine or something like that. Can that those can tighten and those can, cause cuts on their skin. If you're going to do hobbles, get yourself a nice pair of hobbles. I have read some places that this can cause issues with your cow if they are like a really aggressive kicker. Hobbles might not be what you want to use because they can kick so hard or try and kick so hard that it can pull their other leg out from under them, and it can, obviously that's not a good thing. That can cause some other sort of injuries. Sort of, I remember my mom telling me a story about how she tried to kick one of her cousins, I think, and was wearing sort of a longer, tighter skirt, and when she tried, she to kick her cousin, she pulled her other leg out from under her and fell flat on her butt. Same kind of idea. So hobbles might work well for kind of more of a medium level kicker, but they might not be the best choice. So just kind of consider that before you go that route. Another downside to hobbles is that they do get dirty. Just be, where they are. If your cow poops or pees, or when you're taking them off, they fall on the ground and stuff like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Is they are kind of harder to keep clean than some other options we're going to talk about. Another and probably the most popular option is a kick bar. This is something I think our local Fleet Farm even carries them. You can just pick them up at a lot of different dairy supply stores or just general fleet supply stores. This is something that shouldn't hurt the animal. It's basically a bar that's the same shape as sort of the outline of their hips and back, if that makes sense. Almost kind of looks like the peak of a roof a little bit. And the kick bar should be adjustable. I've seen ones that just kind of pull apart. I've seen ones that sort of like crank apart. There's different sort of models of it. There are also sometimes different sizes available. So sometimes you just adjust it that way. Other times they are a set size. So make sure you're paying attention that you are getting the right size or getting one that's adjustable. And basically, this just kind of sits in front of their hips and goes down around their sides and makes it difficult or impossible for them to kick. Kick bars take a little bit of kind of fiddling to get them in the right place and so that they're fitting the animal right, but these are really good and probably the most popular option for getting your cow to stop kicking. The last option is you can use a belly rope. So this is where you have a rope that you tie around your cow. It's just kind of right in front of their udder. And the tightening of the rope is supposed to kind of immobilize the cow a little bit and prevent some kicking. Now, I personally am not comfortable using the rope method, even though a lot of people have good success with it. It is one that if you have it tightened kind of in the wrong spot or tightened too tight, it can cause a lot of discomfort for your cow. It can also cause some like nerve damage and stuff with your cow. Though, again, a lot of people use it and have good success with it. It's not one that I personally feel comfortable with. So I go with the hobbles just because I don't want to be fiddling around with a kick bar, but a kick bar or a hobble, I guess, are kind of my two better recommendations if you have tried everything else to get your cow from kicking. And at the end of the day, if you have a cow who refuses, despite all your best efforts, despite all your kind of trying to treat the problem, prevent the problem, is still kicky and is still dangerous, get rid of the cow. Find somebody who totally understands and doesn't care that they're kicky. Eater, Sell her to someone who's going to eat her. Sell her to someone who just wants to have her raise calves if her milk production allows for that. It's not worth the headache and the heartache. Having a dairy cow is enough work as it is. And if you have a cow that you cannot prevent the kicking or train the kicking out of them, they need to move on down the road. At least that's my personal opinion. Do what you're gonna do. Hopefully these things have given you some stuff to chew on and different ways to think about addressing your kicky cow, and hopefully something here is gonna work for you. On next week's episode, we are going to be diving into different ways you can preg check your cow. So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you get them, and also be sure to turn on automatic downloads. That's super helpful for the podcast, and also you are sure to never miss a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Family Milk Cow Podcast. You can become a part of the Family Milk Cow Podcast by joining the Milkmaid Brigade, sponsoring an episode, or following along on social media. You can find links for all these and more, including show notes, at familymilkcowpodcast.com. If you love what you're hearing, please rate, review, subscribe, and turn on those automatic downloads. One of the best ways to support this show is simply by sharing it. And as always, make sure to give your girl down in the barn a good scratch behind the ears from me.